Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Welcome to this segment of Coach Gurbani's a-sabad-a-day. We continue with our recitation from Gauri Mahalla Panjama. The recitation for today is the 105th passage in this string, and it's recited as follows. Gauri Mahalla Panjama, Kavan Roop Tera Aaradho, Kavan Jog Kaya a-sabad-a-day. कवन गुण जो तुझ लै गावो, कवन बोल पार ब्रह्म रिझावो रहाओ, कवन सो पूजा तेरी करो, कवन सो बिद जित भव जल तरो, कवन तप जित तपिया होए, कवन सो नाम हਉ मैं मल खोए। गुण पूजा ज्ञान ध्यान नानक सगल काल, जिस करी कृपा सतगुर मिले दयाल। This passage essentially gives us the essence of Sikhi, the method, the goal, the process. Because the Guru here starts by asking a series of questions that we can all relate to. Kavan Roop Tera Aaradho, Kavan Jog Kiya le Sadho. How should I meditate? What is your form that I should focus my attention on? Which yoga should I do? We are all aware that there's a whole slew of different yogas even today. And the same was true during the Guru's time. So the Guru is really asking questions that we would be asking, and obviously asking for us to understand. So what is that form that I should focus my attention on? What is the yoga that I should be practicing to master the body? Sadho, to perfect myself. And kavan gun jo tuj le gaavo, kavan bol par brahm rijhao. And here's the goal, par brahm rijhao, to please that par brahm, that supreme self. Pleasing that supreme self simply means to realize that state of consciousness, because we know that the Supreme Self is not amenable to any flattery. So we can't really please the Supreme Self as we could please an employer or we could please a child. Here, pleasing means, how do I attain to that state of consciousness which is called Par Brahm? That is the central question here. So which of these practices that are being listed out need to be followed? Kavan so puja teri karo, kavan so bid jit pav jal taro. Puja, worship. What form should my worship take? Kavan so bid, what is the method? Jit, by which pav jal taro. Pav, jal, pav, fear, jal, water, taro, swimming across. And we notice that Pavjal is a frequently used word in Gurbani, signifying navigating the passage of life. Existence is likened to an ocean of fear, because fear is what drives us in our ordinary ego consciousness. Ultimately, it is the fear of death. We are, for example, in our lives, constantly seeking some level of permanency in a world that is inherently impermanent. We are afraid to die. We do not want to cease to exist. And here's the illusion. We've talked about this in the previous passages. This is the param that we all suffer from. because we think there is an actual death that happens, whereas the self does not die, and the body simply changes its form into the elements from where it comes. So we suffer from this illusion, param, and that is what drives our existential angst. So kavan so bidjit pavjal taro. So the goal is, how do I navigate life and how do I attain that level of consciousness? So the two are related. What is being said here is that you need to be navigating life from a different perspective than the one you have currently. Your perspective has to be more universal. You cannot be caught up in your petty little ego. You have to understand, comprehend that your self-interest, the individual's self-interest, is ultimately dependent on the interest of everybody else. So if you think that by being selfish you're really serving your own end, you're mistaken. It is by serving the global cause that you're really serving yourself. So your consciousness should be universal, global, and that is how you navigate life without fear. Kavan tap jit tapiya hoye, kavan so naam how मैं mal खोए. And here is the clincher. Kavan so naam how मैं mal खोए. So in order to attain to that consciousness that we've just spoken about as Par Brahm, so that we can navigate life, Pavjal, without fear, associated with that is ego consciousness. Kavan so naam how मैं mal खोए. So the Guru is giving us these gradual hints. He's saying that if you wish to attain to that level of Par Brahm, then you have to address your ego. In other words, you have to lose or dissolve your ego, because he says, Haume mal khoye. You have to scrub off the dirt of Haume. Dirt simply means distorted vision of life. We're just looking at life through distorted lenses, through the lens of our own conditioning. And that is what we have to scrub off, so that we can see clearly the unity behind this diversity, so that we don't act out of petty, narrow interests. Kavan tap, he also says. So what are those austerities? What do I have to do? And here's the answer. Naam haume mal khoe. So in Sikhi, the practice, the austerity that we have to conduct is to live life moment by moment without the ego, from a different perspective. That is our austerity. Our austerity is not a physical kind where people would sort of subject their bodies to all kinds of torture, if you will. But for a Sikh, the tap, the austerity, is to dissolve the ego, and that is very difficult. But it is not a physical thing. It's in the mind. So now we see the connection here. The Guru is saying, Haume, ego consciousness, is the problem, is the barrier to Par Brahm, which is universal consciousness. And unless you revert to Par Brahm, to universal consciousness, you will not be able to navigate life without fear. So you need Naam, self-knowledge. And in the conclusion, the Guru says, Gun puja gyan dhyan nanak sagal kaal jis kar kirpa satguru mile dayal. All of this practice, all of this toil should lead one to true worship, which is the assimilation of divine qualities within oneself and the cultivation of that immutable wisdom, Naam. intuitive awareness of what is going on around us. That is the key. And the Guru concludes by saying, those who are so favored are blessed with the Satgur. So for us, the Satgur becomes the stepping stone, if you will, to this self-knowledge, which then scrubs off Haume, which then enables us to see more clearly through the perspective of Par Brahm. So you see how all of this is very neatly kind of put together. Not difficult to understand, but perhaps not so easy to practice. On that note, until the next time, Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.